Hey y'all, I'm Liz, and this is my channel where I tell stories about a life well lived. Some of the stories are funny, but one thing I can tell you, they're all cornbread fabulous. Welcome to the channel. Click subscribe so you can keep up with the crazy antics of my life. When I was a kid, I lived with my grandparents in rural Warren County, and we lived on a farm. It wasn't our farm. My grandfather was a sharecropper. So we lived in this little house, and we didn't have a whole lot. And to get some penny candy was a big deal back then. My granddaddy had a friend who flew a helicopter, and this man would bring a bag of penny candy with him if he knew he was going to be flying over where we lived. And so he would fly down low and he would toss a little brown sack of candy out for me and my sister. And so that was like one of the best things ever. So we always were listening for that helicopter to come. So we were outside playing marbles in the dirt, and I hear in the distance, I hear a helicopter coming. And so I'm thinking, okay, get ready. We're getting ready to get some candy. So me and my sister stand up and we start doing the candy dance, and we're like, hey, hey, throw us the bag of candy. And helicopter flies right over us really low and flies over the woods, hovers there a few minutes, and then flies off. So it was making a circle and coming back. And then my grandmother came out on the back porch and she shot a shotgun into the air. And I thought she was trying to shoot at the helicopter. So she said, y'all get your hips in this house right now. And me and my sister took off running and went inside, and we didn't know what in the world was going on. Well, things settled down. I was watching Bonanza on TV, and it seemed like a normal night until there was like this bang on the door. And so my grandma goes to the door, and there's these two men standing there, and they're wearing suits and white shirts, black ties. They look really, really official. And I'm standing behind my grandma, hanging on to her apron, like, what's going on? And one of the men says, are you Miss Mosley? And she said, yes, I am. And he said, is your husband at home? And she said, well, he might be. And he says, well, did you know that he has a still in the woods over there? And my grandma said, I don't think I know a whole lot about that. Then the other guy reaches into this little briefcase and pulls out an 8x10 black and white glossy photograph of my grandfather standing next to his still with a jar of his product in one hand, looking up and grinning and waving because he thought that it was his friend flying that helicopter too. And that was the year that my granddaddy helped build Highway 401. After my granddaddy spent about a year in jail for having the moonshine, I guess it was more about not paying taxes on the moonshine than making it, but either way, he spent a year doing that, and when he came home, he didn't touch liquor again after that. Up until that point, though, he had been probably drunk every day that I had known him up until that point. I was like maybe 4 when that happened. So before my granddaddy got caught by the government, he had gone on a bender and he had stayed drunk. And my grandma told him that if he was going to stay drunk like that, he had to leave the house. And so he did. And then he was gone for about 2 days. And my grandma got worried, but there was no way to call and check on him. We just didn't have telephones back then in Warren County. And so this man comes by who knew my granddaddy, and he said, Miss Mosley, you need to get somebody to drive you over there and get Toot. He's laid up in his mama's house, which, by the way, was falling down, had no electricity, and had been abandoned probably like 20 years at this point. He's over there in his mama's house crying drunk, and he's got a rifle with him. So then my grandma went and got my mom, who had been recovering from a car accident, and she had cast on her driving leg, which was her right leg. But she somehow managed to get in that car and drive with her left foot to the house. And so we get there and we pull up, and my granddaddy's inside, and he's like, "Who is it?" And my grandma said, "Toot, what are you doing in there?" And he said, "Don't come in here, Ann." And she says, "Well, I'm not going to come in there, but I want you to come on out here. We're going to take you home and get you sober." And so he said, "No, don't you come in here. I got a rifle in here." And then she said, "Well, put the rifle down, Toot, and get in this car. You're scaring people." And so there was all this commotion and hear all this noise going on. And then my granddad starts crying. And he calls out to my grandma, Ann, would you come in here, please?" And my grandma said, "What, for what? I'm not coming in there as long as you got that rifle." And he said, "I done kicked the shit pot over and shit's all over me." He said, "I'll put the gun outside the door, but please come help me." Oh, it was the worst ride home. And I think that was right about the time that things started hitting the fan. And I think that things have a way of working out like that, because my granddaddy needed to stop. And getting caught by the government making moonshine was probably the best thing that ever happened to him. And the state of North Carolina got some free labor out of it. Click subscribe and turn on notifications. Have a good one. Until next time, stay cornbread fabulous.